What if you suddenly woke up and found yourself living in the Middle Ages, not as a mighty knight or a dazzling princess, but sleeping on damp straw, chewing bread tougher than bricks, and at night having to fight for space with the rats? You step outside, and the air bites with icy cold. The streets just mud everywhere. And breakfast, oh, just a thin, watery porridge, so bland you catch yourself thinking, honestly, a cup of plain warm water might taste better than this. Sounds tragic, doesn't it? But imagine all of that being told in a slow, drowsy rhythm, the kind that rocks you gently toward sleep, sprinkled with just enough sarcasm to make you chuckle softly, right before your eyes get heavy. If you're curious to experience the Middle Ages in the safest way possible, meaning without actually having to sleep on straw, then go ahead and hit like, share, and subscribe. And now, let me take you on a journey into a real day in the life of the Middle Ages. You open your eyes, and you see nothing. Not because you've gone blind, but because the darkness is still thick and heavy. This isn't the cozy darkness of a modern bedroom, with curtains drawn tight and a soft lamp glowing gold. No, this is the darkness of a medieval hut steeped in the stale smell of smoke, laced with the damp scent of straw, and so dense it feels like you could bite into it, like a spoonful of cold, lumpy porridge. Out there, the rooster has already started crowing. It crows and crows, like it's desperate to announce something important. But you know the truth. There's nothing important at all. It's just crowing, because, well, that's its job. You let out a bitter little smile in this time. Everyone works themselves to exhaustion at their job, even the rooster. You try to lift yourself up from the straw pile. It crackles under you, clinging to your hair, your clothes. You brush at it, but straw never really leaves you. It's loyal, like a dog. Except, at least, a dog keeps you warm and guards the house. Straw only makes you itch. Next to you, the whole family is still curled tightly together. The children whimper softly, then drift off again, while the adults shift, about to wake. No one here gets to sleep in. Dawn isn't for savoring, it's for surviving. You pull the blanket higher. Calling it a blanket is generous. It's really a coarse wool cloth, thick and heavy, like a soaked sheep. And it smells exactly like one too. People call it warm. You think maybe warm just means not freezing to death immediately. From the corner of the hut, you hear mice, gnawing, scurrying, scratching. You don't scream like someone in a modern movie. Here, mice aren't intruders. They're your roommates. Sometimes they're even helpful if you're lucky. They'll eat the crust off your rock-hard bread so your teeth don't suffer. If you're unlucky, they'll eat the rest of the bread too. Historians still debate the causes of the plagues of the Middle Ages. You don't need to debate. You hear them gnawing every night. And you already know the answer. Wind seeps through the warped wooden walls, whistling softly. You shiver. In this time, wind isn't just wind. It's a reminder that winter can kill faster than any blade. You glance toward the hearth. The ashes have cooled, leaving only a weak red ember flickering. It crackles like an old man sighing. If no one gets up soon to stoke it, you'll be shivering hard by morning, maybe even cursing the fact you were born into this century at all. You take a deep breath. The air is thick with old smoke, clinging to your hair, your clothes, even your skin. And you think, if this smell were bottled and sold in the modern world, it would probably be called Eau de Survival, the fragrance of survival. And maybe no one would ever buy it unless they were filming a history documentary. Outside, a dog howls, pulling a long echo through the night. Then the whole world joins in, roosters crowing, dogs crying, mice scurrying, the wind howling. A full symphony, completely free of charge, though not one you'd ever want to hear again. Modern people call mornings fresh. You'd call this one noisy, but cold. You sit up, your spine creaking like straw. Your eyes sting from the smoke. Your throat feels dry and raw. You reach out only to realize there's no clean water to drink. If you want it, you'll have to wait until someone brings a bucket from the well. And then you remember the well is a few hundred yards away. In this freezing wind, maybe it's better to stay thirsty a little longer. Still, you comfort yourself. At least you still have your teeth. Teeth strong enough to chew bread hard as stone. Not everyone in the village is so lucky. Some bite into a piece and lose half a jaw. Bread, in these times, doesn't just keep you alive, it gives you a very real dental checkup. You lean back for a moment, listening. The ashes whisper. The wind strokes the thatched roof. Mice squeak softly in the corners. Before dawn, time itself seems sluggish, lazy, as if even the sun doesn't want to wake up. And you realize maybe that's the hidden philosophy of the Middle Ages when everything is harsh. You learn to stretch each breath, to linger in each fragile moment of peace, even when it's filled with rats and winter wind. Historians still argue, was it this very slowness that shaped the rhythm of medieval life? You don't need to answer. All you know is, right now, before dawn, surviving just one more hour already feels like enough. You close your eyes, wearing a tired smile. Before dawn, your day begins not with light, but with darkness, ashes, and a touch of self-mockery. You sit up in the dark, your hand searching for the rough wool cloth. The ashes have cooled. The mice are still rustling. The wind still howls, long and low. And so, out of that heavy darkness, you know you have to step into the next part of the day, truly waking, inside this poor little straw hut. You shift your body. The pile of straw beneath you rustles, as if reminding you it has been there all night, and it will cling to you all day. A stalk sticks tight in your hair. You pull it out, only to find 3 more sneaking inside your shirt. Living in straw, really, is like having a clingy lover never letting you go, no matter how little you want them. The light outside isn't dawn yet, just a faint gray streak leaking through warped wooden slats. It's so weak, you wonder if even the sun is lazy, unwilling to show itself over this frozen world. Historians love to romanticize dawn, but you know better. The morning light is only strong enough to reveal more dust and more mice scurrying across your hut. You breathe in damp straw, old smoke, the unwashed scent of a body that hasn't bathed in. You can't even remember how long. In the Middle Ages, the idea of daily bathing would have sounded like a joke. If someone told you to wash once a day, you'd think they were possessed. In truth, bathing once a season was already a luxury. And so, in this moment, you comfort yourself with the thought that sweat is the smell of honest labor. Or at least, it's the smell everyone shares, so no one really notices. You turn to look at your family. The children are curled up, heads pressed together, while the adults breathe in rough, uneven snores, like some old orchestra trying to tune up. Beneath you, a hen clatters in the corner, maybe searching for warmth too. In this hut, there is no such thing as privacy. Family, livestock, insects, mice, everyone shares the same thatched roof, the same breath, the same cold air. And if you think that sounds awful, just remember, the rent for a modern apartment is just as terrifying. At least here, you don't pay money. You only pay with a lifetime of labor. The ashes in the hearth have gone cold, but your mother or your wife, depending on the role you choose, has already woken to stir the fire again. The dry wood pops and crackles, orange light flickering across the crooked wooden walls. Your chest eases a little. This tiny flame feels like a daily miracle. Fragile, fleeting, yet it keeps the whole family alive. In this century, faith in God and faith in glowing embers hold the same power. Both promise you might live through one more day. You rise from your bedding. Your feet touch the ground, cold, damp, caked with mud. People here call it a floor. You'd call it a miniature field. There are no tiles, no wooden planks, just packed dirt scattered with straw. Every step is its own tasting menu earth, dampness, and sometimes the unmistakable scent of chicken droppings. You wince, but remind yourself at least it's natural. The same kind of experience modern folks now pay high prices to enjoy at rustic farmstay retreats. You hear the wind outside, whistling through the thatched roof. It slips into the cracks, brushing sharp against your skin. Mice scurry wildly, but no one bothers chasing them anymore. You've grown too used to them. In fact, sometimes their company makes you feel less alone. In this world, companionship can come from the smallest creatures. The adults start to stir. Wooden spoons clink inside clay pots. Breakfast must be on its way. Black bread, hard as stone. And maybe a little watery porridge. You swallow, not out of hunger, but to brace yourself. Breakfast here isn't joy. It's survival duty. That chunk of bread might make your teeth crack like dry twigs, as though testing your jaw's endurance. But at least it will keep you full for a few more hours. You sigh, looking around. The crooked wooden walls, the dripping thatch, the shabby, cold hut. Everything feels poor, harsh, meager. Yet, in this century, this is normal. In fact, you're considered lucky you have a roof, a hearth, straw to sleep on, and mice to share it with. The poorer ones than you, they have nothing but the sky itself for their blanket and bed. Historians still debate, was medieval life truly unbearable misery? Or are we just judging it through modern eyes, spoiled by comfort? You, though you know the truth, whether misery or normalcy, it is still reality. And you still have to wake up in this straw hut every morning, every year, for your whole life. You sit quietly for a moment, letting the newly kindled fire warm your hands. Outside, the wind still howls, ashes still drift, mice still gnaw. Yet for a brief instant, you feel a kind of gentleness, as if the world with its mud, its straw, its stink has paused, gifting you one fragile moment to breathe. You close your eyes, smiling bitterly. Waking up in a straw hut, this is the opening act of a medieval day, a day that promises nothing, except that you're still alive to experience it. You sit quietly for a moment, letting the newly kindled fire warm your hands. Outside, the wind still howls, ashes still drift, mice still gnaw. Yet for a brief instant, you feel a kind of gentleness, as if the world with its mud, its straw, its stink has paused, gifting you one tiny pause to breathe. Then the church bells ring, distant yet clear, echoing long through the morning fog. They call every soul to look toward God and remind them a new day has truly begun. You know that after waking in this straw hut, the first thing you must do now is pray. The bells carry through the mist, steady and deep, like the heartbeat of the whole village. You lift your head, still seated inside the straw hut, and your hand moves automatically to make the sign of the cross. No one needs to tell you. You don't even need to think. In this time, morning prayer is as instinctive as modern people checking their phone notifications the moment they wake. You whisper a few lines of prayer, your eyes still fixed on the rekindled fire. Truthfully, part of your prayer is for your soul, and another part is simply for the flame not to die out again. In the Middle Ages, salvation and warmth often walked hand in hand. Modern folks can debate theology all they like, but you know this without fire. Your whole family would shiver like sinners awaiting the last judgment. Pale light seeps through the warped wooden slats, dim and gray. It reveals dust floating in the smoke-heavy air. You breathe it in the acrid scent of ashes mixed with coarse wool, with human musk, with the damp smell of mold. And you think to yourself, if heaven truly exists, may it carry at least a gentler fragrance than this. You kneel down. Your knees press into the damp ground. The earth is soft, cold, caked with mud. A shiver runs through you, but you remind yourself This is the posture of humility. People say, "From dust you came, and to dust you shall return." You think, with a floor like this, you're returning to dust a little too soon. A mouse scurries past, right in front of you. It doesn't care much about holiness. You glance at it, then at the small wooden cross hanging on the wall. For a fleeting moment, you wonder, does God ever bother with mice? Maybe not. Or maybe the mouse is simply doing its duty, sowing fear, reminding you that life never stays peaceful. Historians still argue about how deeply medieval folk truly believed in God. But looking at this scene, you realize, believer or not, no one dares skip morning prayer. You whisper more, lips moving in the pale cloud of your cold breath. The words repeat slowly, like little waves rolling to shore. You sink into the rhythm, almost sleepy again. Prayer, after all, is its own kind of lullaby only here. You're required to stay awake. Outside, the bells ring again. Their sound travels far, spilling across the fields still drowned in fog. You imagine the whole village kneeling at once, inside damp huts just like yours, a sacred sight. Maybe a ridiculous one. Also, maybe dozens of grimy, tousle-haired people kneeling in cold mud, whispering to a distant God. All of them hoping only that today will be a little less cold than yesterday. The fire in the hearth flares up, orange light flickering across the dirt floor. Relief softens your chest, as though your prayer has been answered. But you know the truth. The credit belongs to the hand that stirred the fire, not a miracle. People say, God helps those who help themselves. You think, in this century, that saying is twice as true. When the prayer is finished, you stand and brush the mud from your knees. It clings stubbornly, refusing to let go. You sigh. Maybe that too is a metaphor for medieval life. You try to shake off poverty, but it sticks like mud. The hut is brighter now, though the air is still hazy with drifting ash. The children rub their eyes. The adults begin preparing the first meal of the day. You hear wooden spoons scraping clay pots, ceramic bowls clinking together. Your stomach reminds you the prayer is done, but the hunger remains. You step closer to the hearth, peering into the old iron pot. Steam rises up, carrying the plain, bland scent of grain. Breakfast is waiting, and you know this is the first real challenge of the day. The iron pot on the stove begins to bubble, thin wisps of steam curling through the low hut. The faint smell of grain spreads not the inviting aroma of modern morning coffee, but just enough to remind you there's something to put in your stomach. In this time, breakfast isn't a pleasure, it's an obligation. You sit down by the fire, bringing your hands near the ashes. The little flame crackles softly, wood snapping in small bursts. It isn't truly warm, only just enough to stop your hands from trembling. You look into the pot-thin porridge. So thin, it's mostly water with a few lonely grains floating around. Modern people would call it detox soup. Medieval people just call it a meal. Your mother ladles the porridge into wooden bowls, each scoop clinking against the pot. You take yours, sniffing it. The smell is so faint, it's almost no smell at all. You sip a mouthful, your tongue confirms it's really just warm water with the idea of grain in it. You swallow. Your dry throat eased a little. Not good. Not bad. Just survival. Black bread is set out on the table. It's hard, dark, and dense, as if sliced from a block of wood. You try to break it. It cracks with a sharp snap. The sensation is like working in a forge, only missing the hammer and anvil. Historians still argue about whether medieval black bread was really as tough as legend says. But you know when a bite almost breaks your teeth, you don't need more evidence. You chew. The dry crunch mixes with the crackle of the fire. If you blindfolded someone, they might not tell which sound is the wood popping and which is your teeth struggling with the bread. But you still swallow. Because here, swallowing means living one more day. The children slurp their porridge, smearing it all around their mouths. The adults sit in silence, eating small bites, their vacant eyes fixed on the fire. No one talks much. Eating isn't a time for conversation. It's a time to save energy. Every spoonful of porridge, every bite of bread is fuel to drag a body out into the fields. You force yourself to bite into another piece of bread. This one is thick, hard, making you wonder if the village mason accidentally mixed lime into the dough. You chuckle quietly. If he did, at least it makes the bread last longer in your stomach. Modern people prefer bread soft, airy, fluffy. Medieval folks believe the closer bread is to brick, the more reliable it is. A sip of weak beer is poured, not the cheerful kind of drink, but a pale, yellow liquid, bland and flat, only a shade better than well water. Medieval people drink beer instead of water, because wells are rarely safe. You touch it to your lips, the taste is slightly sour, slightly bitter, and not pleasant at all. But at least it doesn't kill you right away. And that, here, is the highest standard for a drink. You sit still, listening to everything wooden spoons scraping clay bowls, children slurping, the fire crackling, the wind whistling through the thatch outside. This world is stitched together from tiny sounds, repeating over and over, like a drowsy song without a chorus. You sip the last spoonful of porridge. The bowl is empty, but your stomach feels far more empty than full. You sigh. That's the truth. Breakfast doesn't fill you. It only keeps you, just hungry enough not to collapse in the fields. And for now, that's enough. You wipe your mouth and stand. Straw crunches underfoot. Ash drifts through the dim light. Outside, the wind still howls. The church bells have fallen silent, and the sun finally begins to rise, slipping through the pale mist. You know it's time for the fields. Once breakfast is over, there's no reason to linger by the fire. The day doesn't truly begin inside the hut, but out there, in the mud, with calloused hands. You step outside, and the wind rushes in, biting cold, as if the whole village has conspired with nature to snuff out the fragile warmth you just gathered from the hearth. Smoke still clings to your hair. Coarse wool still hangs on your skin. And now, there's the smell of damp earth and animal dung rising from the village path. A full symphony of scents completely free of charge. Beneath your feet, the mud is thick and heavy. Shoes, sorry you don't have any. Just bare feet or rough sandals, quickly swallowed by the gray-brown muck. You lift your leg, hearing a wet squelch, slurp, like a spoon stirring thin porridge. Modern people pay for a mud spa. You get one every day, all your life, for free. The road to the fields isn't paved. It's just a beaten path cutting through farmland, littered with rocks and flooded with puddles. Each step, you shiver from the cold while quietly wondering if you slip. Will you fall straight into that pile of fresh cow dung by the trail? It's the medieval version of a lottery only here. Everyone plays, and no one wins. On your shoulder, you carry a plow or a stick, or whatever heavy tool bends your back low. Historians like to debate the productivity of medieval peasants. But you know, productivity means nothing compared to the ability to survive. And your curved spine is all the proof anyone needs. You lift your head. The fields stretch out, hazy under the morning mist. On the patchy ground, a few cows chew lazily at the grass. Their lowing echoes half complaint, half mockery. You watch them and wonder who has it worse? You turning soil from dawn till dusk, or them straining at the plow for you? Maybe it's the same misery, only they'll never write a diary to complain about it. You set the plow down. Your hands grip the wooden handle, calloused, cracked, worn raw. The cold stings your dry skin. The mud blackens your nails. You inhale, then start to pull. The soil is heavy. The mud clings. Sweat breaks out quickly, even though the wind stays cold. In this world, you don't need a gym. The field is your training ground, and hunger is your coach. Mice. Yes, they're here too. They skitter beneath drying straw, darting away as you approach. They gnaw the seeds, nibble the sprouts, stealing your food before it grows. And strangely, you forgive them. Maybe because they're only doing what everyone else does, fighting to survive. You stop, gasping for breath. The wind cuts through you, and the smoke, still lodged in your chest from last night, makes your lungs wheeze. You think, no wonder medieval lives were so short, when every breath feels like carrying the whole straw hut inside your ribs. Living to 30 is already an achievement. You look around. Others are in the fields too. They bend low, just like you. Small figures etched against the mist. Their voices call out to one another, mixing with the cow's groans, the crow's cries, the howling wind. A morning symphony sour, weary, but the only music this life has to offer. A fragile ray of sunlight finally breaks through the mist. It falls across the field, making the dewdrops on the grass shimmer. Beautiful in its own way. But you know that ray doesn't promise anything except that the work ahead will be longer and harder, because soon the cold and fog will give way to heat and dust. You bend down and keep plowing. Each furrow turned is a whispered promise of seeds, of harvest. But you can't be sure. One storm, one plague of pests, or simply too many mice, any of it is enough to erase the labor of months. Historians like to say, medieval peasants lived in uncertainty. You think, living in uncertainty sounds fancy. Really, it's just a polite way of saying you plow this morning, but you might still go hungry tonight. You straighten up, your back aching sharp. You lean on the plow and look across the far fields, where others are still bent low. A flicker of bitterness rises. Then you let out a quiet laugh. At least you're not alone. Everyone suffers the same. Shared misery is its own kind of comfort. You breathe in, breathe out, listening to the wind sweep across the empty fields. Then you bend again, your hands finding the rough wooden handle. The morning's labor has only just begun, and soon the sounds of work will spread across the village. Hammer strikes, mill wheels grinding, children shouting. You drive the plow deep into the earth, hearing the heavy squelch of mud as it breaks. Each cut of soil is like the ground itself sighing. The oxen grunt and strain, ropes pull taut, wood creaks under pressure. The whole field becomes a slow, weary orchestra, one in which you are an unwilling musician. The sounds of labor don't just come from the fields. From afar, the village is fully awake. The blacksmith's hammer rings out in steady beats, clang, clang like its own kind of morning bell. Maybe the blacksmith never wanted to be a musician, but that heavy hammer still makes music no one asked for. Modern folks would call it industrial noise. Medieval people just call it the neighbor. You pause to listen. Somewhere in the village, the grain mill groans, wood grinding against stone, creak, creak, as if it's complaining with every turn. And to be fair, it has good reason. That work isn't so different from yours spinning endlessly, only to produce a little flour, maybe not even enough to feed a family. Historians argue about medieval technology, but when you hear that weary mill complaining, you know the truth advanced or not. The eternal soundtrack of labor is always complaint. Children's voices rise, half laughing, half crying, as they stumble and chase each other through the village. They don't know the difference between work time and playtime. To them, the whole world is one giant mud pit, waiting for them to fall in. You glance over, thinking, well, at least they're happy. Give it a few years, and they'll be gripping plows like you. And mud will stop being a game. The wind shifts, carrying ash from someone's hearth, scattering it through the air. It stings your eyes, tickles your nose, makes you sneeze. You wonder, maybe the whole village is sharing its ashes, gifting each other smoke so everyone gets an equal share. A kind of community, but only at the level of breathing. Dogs bark, chickens scatter, goats bleat, all of it colliding, mixing into the morning symphony. No conductor, no steady rhythm. Yet together, these sounds make what you simply call an ordinary day. Modern people complain about their neighbors hammering or renovating. You're used to an entire village making noise. from dawn until dark. You keep pulling the plow, dirt flying up, mud squelching beneath your feet. Your hands burn, the calluses split open, but the plow's handle stays stubborn. It doesn't care if you're in pain. If you're tired, it only knows how to grind wood against your palms. Creak, creak, unyielding. In that sound, you hear your own lifespan short, but steadily worn down day by day. A mouse darts across the freshly turned furrow. It slips quickly through the soil, unconcerned with the sweat dripping from your face. You watch it with a twinge of envy. The mouse doesn't plow, doesn't harvest, yet it still finds grain to eat. It's a parasite, a thief, but somehow it lives easier than the peasant. Historians rarely record the sound of mice in their chronicles. But you know the truth if history were honest. The squeak of mice would rank among the top sounds of medieval life. You lift your head, sweat and smoke stinging your lips with salt. The labor sounds surround you, the heaving breath of the man beside you, the oxen groaning, the hammer pounding, the mill turning, the children shouting, a noisy, uneven symphony, yet steady like the heartbeat of the whole village. It isn't beautiful. It isn't graceful. And yet, strangely, it makes you feel safe. As long as you hear the sound of labor, it means people are still here, still surviving. You bend again, pressing the plow forward. The wind sweeps past, ash drifts again. Mud squelches under your feet again. Time moves slow, each furrow, each sound dripping like water. You know this morning will blur into midday soon, and the sounds of labor will gradually give way to the rhythm of sunlight, of hunger, of exhaustion, spreading wide. You breathe hard, lifting your eyes to the sky. The sun has climbed higher, its light sharper now. The noise around you continues, but you've grown used to it. Your ears no longer separate the voices, the hammers, the groans. They all merge into one dull backdrop of existence. And on that gray backdrop, the morning simply drifts away. The sun finally breaks free of the mist, no longer a pale streak of light, but a round, milky white disk hanging overhead. Its glow spills across the fields, revealing everything more clearly. Blotches of mud, weeds sprouting wild, and bent figures stretched out like crooked letters, written in sweat. You straighten your back, wipe your forehead. Sweat stings with salt, mixing with dirt, painting your face in a natural coat of mud. Modern people might call it a mineral face mask. Medieval people call it simply dirty. The sound of plows cutting soil keeps its rhythm. But now your ears catch another note, the droning buzz of bees. They drift across the fields, indifferent to who's bending low in the dirt. You glance at them, thinking at least bees get honey. You had watery porridge this morning. Historians like to debate whether medieval folk were malnourished. You smile bitterly. Try living a single day on wooden bread and grain water. And the answer is obvious. The wind shifts again, this time carrying a trace of warmth with the sun. Smoke drifts from the village fires, thinning into the sky. You inhale, and still your nose burns. Smoke seems to be the one constant flavoring of every part of the day. Morning, noon, night, there is always someone stoking a fire, and always someone breathing the smoke. Your hands grip the plow tighter as you keep pulling. The soil grows harder, the sun drying its surface into stubborn crust. Your palms burn, cracked calluses bleeding tiny threads of red. You glance down, watching drops of blood blend into brown mud. A new color on the field, though no one notices. Here, blood is just like rain it falls, then disappears into the earth. Above you, crows call out, their harsh caw, caw, sounding like grumpy old men critiquing your efforts. You squint up at them, wondering, are they waiting for you to scatter seed so they can swoop down and steal? Or are they waiting for you to collapse so they can enjoy another kind of meal? In this world, even the birds are freeloaders. You keep pulling, your breath heavy. Around you, others look the same, backs bent, faces down, rough hands at work. No one talks much. The morning noise has faded. Now comes the weary quiet, where each person is sunk into their own labor. The hammers, the mill, the chickens, they're all distant now. Out here, there's only the wind, the earth, and human breath. You glance at your neighbor. He's old, his back deeply hunched, yet still gripping the plow, his hands trembling. You sigh. He's been at this his whole life. And suddenly, you see it. Your future is standing right beside you. Modern people like to say, work shapes character. You think here, work shapes the curve of a spine. Another mouse darts across the fresh furrow. It flicks a look at you, quick and bright, then vanishes. You give a faint smile. Mice always seem cheerful. even when you're worn to the bone. They are the true optimists of this world. You envy them, but only for a moment. After all, they too live with the smoke, the ash, the mud. Only difference is they don't complain. The sun climbs higher, its heat pressing down. The coarse wool on your back sticks with sweat, heavy and itchy, but you don't dare take it off. The sun may be hot, but the wind is still cold. Medieval people don't get to balance the temperature with air conditioning. You only have one solution: endure both at once. You stop, exhaling hard. Your stomach growls another sound woven into the field's symphony. Time has passed. Morning is slipping into noon, and your body is calling for something, anything, to keep going. Not tasty, not much, but enough to fool the hunger for a while. You set the plow upright, wiping your hands on your coarse trousers. Dirt sticks, blood sticks, sweat sticks, all blending into one grimy layer you wear like a second skin. You tilt your face to the sun, now almost at its peak, and you know morning is gone. It's time to think about lunch, a poor meal, but one more anticipated than anything else. You lean the plow aside, your back aching as if you've carried the whole village on your shoulders. The sun stands overhead, beating down on the dried fields, turning dust into drifting ash. Sweat has dried on your face, leaving white streaks of salt, bitter on your lips. That's the natural seasoning you always carry with you. Villagers start heading home, or else sit right there in the fields, finding shade beneath a tree or by a hedge. You do the same. You sit on the hard ground, which feels little different from stone. Your stomach growls loudly, reminding you that morning prayers didn't quite deliver wooden bread, and thin porridge vanished from your belly hours ago. A cloth sack is opened. Inside, black bread, even harder than it was in the morning. You try to break it, but it resists fiercely, snapping like brittle bones. Modern folks like their sandwiches soft, gentle, comforting. Medieval people have sand brick and edible brick tough enough to test the limits of your teeth. You chew, your jaw creaks, and for a moment you can't tell if the sound comes from your mouth or the blacksmith's hammer ringing faintly in the distance. Next comes a piece of cheese, not the smooth, golden melt you'd see in an ad, but a lump, dry, salty, clinging stubbornly to your tongue. You think to yourself, without cheese, this bread would murder your stomach outright. With cheese, at least the death comes, properly seasoned. Then an onion is pulled out. You bite, and tears sting your eyes, not from emotion, but from its sharp burn. Maybe this is the only spice strong enough to mask the taste of wooden bread and sour cheese. Modern people might call it rustic cuisine. Medieval people call it eating so you don't collapse. There's a little more weak beer. You take a sip. The sour, flat taste spreading over your tongue. Not good, not fragrant, but at least it helps the bread slide down. You smirk to yourself. The well water is filthy. Beer is just less dangerous. No wonder the whole village drinks it like it's plain water. Historians sometimes marvel at the volume of beer consumed in the Middle Ages. But you know it wasn't pleasure. It was the only way not to die of thirst. You look around. Everyone eats in silence, broken only by the dry crunch of chewing and the heavy swallow of throats. No one praises, no one complains. A meal is just a meal plain, dull but necessary. Children slurp noisily. Some even gnaw on crusts that have fallen in the dirt. You smile bitterly here. The 5-second rule isn't a rule. It's a privilege. Just having something to pick up is already luck. A mouse creeps near the cloth sack, quick-eyed, twitching, waiting for its chance. You wave your hand. It darts away, but it will be back. Mice know the rules, as well as you do. Your meager lunch is their meager lunch too. And sometimes, you can't even tell who's the host and who's the guest. You keep chewing. The last bite of bread is thick and unyielding, but you push through. You don't eat for pleasure, you eat because without it, the afternoon fields will swallow your strength whole. And so, bite by bite, sip by sour sip, you invest in the weary hours ahead. The sun grows harsher, dust rising in heavier clouds. You raise a hand to shield your face, squinting upward. There are no clocks to mark the end of rest, only the shortening shadow of the sun, and the feeling of being, not full, but a little less hungry. That's the signal to stand up again. You brush off your trousers, but the mud and dust cling stubbornly, refusing to leave. Just like medieval life, the more you try to shake it off, the deeper it sticks. You sigh and step back to the plow. Your back bends again. Your hands grip the wooden handle again, and the earth squelches under your feet once more. Lunch is over, leaving no aftertaste, except this: you still have just enough strength to keep going. And really, that's all it was ever meant for. You return to the fields after the meager meal. The hard bread is still wedged in your teeth. The sour, flat beer still lingers at the back of your throat. But no one pauses for longer rest. In this century, the sun at its peak isn't a reason to stop. It's a reason to hurry. Before darkness falls, and the work remains unfinished. The sunlight beats down on your head, burning like an invisible hand slapping again and again. The coarse wool on your back hangs heavy with sweat. The smell of sweat blends with hot earth and animal dung, forming the shared perfume of the entire village. Modern people might pay dearly for fragrances of wood or musk. You only need an afternoon in the fields, completely free, and lasting far too long. The plow digs back into the soil, its blade screeching with every pass. Your hands burn raw. The calluses sting and split. You gasp for air, lungs tight, as if the morning smoke still lingers stubbornly inside. The wind stirs, carrying dry dust that stings your eyes. You rub them and realize, if miracles exist, here they appear only as a breeze with less dust. The oxen bellow loud, mixing with the harsh cries of crows overhead. Now and then, a dog howls from the village, as if offering commentary on your misery. You let out a bitter laugh. Even the animals add their voices to the afternoon symphony. And you, tired as you are still the lead instrument, dragging this endless music forward with every heavy stroke of the plow. After a while, the sun tilts slightly. Its light turns golden, but the heat doesn't fade. Your body feels like an iron pot left to stew over the fire. Sweat pours out, soaking into the soil, turning into salt within every grain of dust. You think, if anyone ever measured, this whole field is watered with as much sweat as with rain. Around you, others trudge on in silence. No one talks, only breathing, footsteps in the mud, wood creaking, all blending into one dull rhythm. Historians call it the communal spirit of labor. You see it as a collective exhaustion. You lift your head, glancing past the fence, where a group of children dash by. They laugh, throwing clumps of mud at one another, faces smeared and bright. You click your tongue. A few years from now, those same hands won't throw mud for fun. They'll grip plows like yours, throwing sweat into the soil. Play. Here is only rehearsal for labor. A mouse appears, skittering along the fresh furrow. It finds a loose seed, quietly hauling it away. You watch with a trace of envy. It works little, eats much. You work endlessly, and still might not eat enough. That kind of unfairness is older than history itself. The afternoon drags, the light softens, the sky deepens into a darker gold. The breeze is gentler now, carrying smoke from the village. Someone must be kindling the fire for supper. The mingled scent of smoke and ash stirs your stomach again, though midday wasn't far behind. You smile faintly here. Hunger doesn't keep a schedule. It's your most loyal companion, from morning till night. You lean on the plow, sighing. Your back aches. Your legs feel heavy as stone. But the work isn't done. The field still waits for another pass. Seeds still need planting. The day refuses to end, and you don't have the right to stop. Modern people talk about work-life balance. Medieval people only know work-work balance. You keep going. A few more furrows, until the sun stretches long shadows across the ground. The heat eases, but in its place, a deep ache seeps into your bones. You glance up at the sky. Blue has turned to gray. The crows have flown home, and soon the church bells will ring for evening. You know the long afternoon is closing, and when it does, the village shifts into another rhythm, the small market, where people seek a sliver of liveliness in their repeating days. Not joyful like a festival, not loud like a holiday, but at least a change. Another note in the dull symphony of life. You leave the field as the evening shadows stretch wide. Your legs feel heavy as timber, your back bent from the plow, and still your stomach growls again. The good news today is market day. The bad news market day doesn't mean abundance. It only means a chance to trade what you lack for what someone else has too much of. And usually, everyone lacks the same. The road to the market is mottled with mud, still squelching with every step. You think to yourself, this market doesn't need a signpost. Its smell is enough to guide you there. The tang of tanned leather, the sharpness of dried fish, the sour bite of cheese, the smoke of portable hearths, all blending into one collective perfume. Modern people would wrinkle their noses. You've grown used to it. To you, it's the scent of opportunity and survival. Shouts echo all around. A man selling ragged wool cries. Strong, strong cloth, even as you can see, it's about to tear apart. The salt seller holds his pouch like treasure. And truthfully, here salt is worth more than anything that shines. You touch a few rough grains, spilling through your fingers like sand. And you understand sometimes this sharp taste does more to keep you alive than any prayer. A little child tugs at his mother's sleeve, pointing at a tiny piece of honey cake on the stall. His eyes light up like he's glimpsing heaven itself. You watch, then smile sadly. That crumb of sweetness costs as much as a whole day's labor for their family. In this world, luxury isn't gola or jewels. It's just a taste of something sweet. You weave through the crowd, bumping shoulders with this person and that. Coarse wool brushes against your arms. The smells of sweat and mud mingle in the air. Somewhere a dog barks, mixed with the clucking of chickens in wicker cages. And, of course, the mice are here, too, creeping around the grain stalls, snatching whatever kernels spill. The market isn't just for people. It's for mice as well. You think at least the mice know where the action is. There's a corner for entertainment. A wandering singer plucks a few off-key notes on his lute, singing about princes and princesses no one in the market believes in. Yet they stand and listen anyway. What other choice do they have? Modern people have Netflix. Medieval people have a lone minstrel, sometimes out of tune, but enough to keep the day from feeling too empty. You try trading. A little scrap of grain for a small lump of salt. The weight in your pouch shifts lighter here, heavier there, but inside you feel no richer. Historians debate local trade systems and the economic strength of communities. You know the truth. It's just swapping one kind of hunger for another, as long as it keeps you from dying right away. Evening light drips down, but the market still bustles. Children run through mud, splashing it everywhere. Adults shake their heads. Old women shout themselves hoarse selling vegetables. Old men sit beside charcoal stoves, ash drifting into the air. The atmosphere is weary, yet more alive than a normal day in the fields. Maybe just pressing through the crowd, just hearing other voices, is its own strange kind of joy. You stop at a stall selling candles. The wax is yellow, rough, with the sharp, animal smell of bees. You touch one. It feels sticky. Candles here aren't for romance, not for atmosphere. They're the only defense against the thick weight of darkness. One small candle can cost as much as several meals. You sigh and move on because you know food is worth more than light. The sky leans slowly into night. The shouting fades. Stalls fold up. The crowd scatters. You leave the market with a little salt in your hand, and more smoke clinging to your clothes. The small market closes, leaving only the sound of ashes drifting, the wind passing through thatch, and your body heavy with exhaustion. You glance back. The sun rests against the edge of the village, its light spilling into a darkened gold. The long afternoon has closed, and now another rhythm begins. The sun goes down, and the darkness pushes in. The sun slips further, sliding behind the thatched rooftops, its golden light fading into pale red. The fields fall quiet. Only the slow footsteps of those leaving their work remain. You walk too, mud clinging to your heels, heavy as if the earth itself had spent the whole day trying to hold you down. The air changes. By day, the wind blows dry, carrying dust and ash everywhere. Now it blows colder, slower, as if pulling the warmth out of your body. You tug the coarse wool tighter around you. It's damp, heavy, sour with sweat and smoke, but it's still the only shield you have against the cold to come. Modern people have thick coats, electric blankets, even climate control. You have one old sheep turned into a sweater, and the hope it stays patient enough to keep you warm till morning. The church bells toll again, long and deep, drowning out the scattered barking of dogs. The bells call for evening prayer, but they're also a signal the day is truly over. Historians say the bells were the heartbeat of medieval life. For you, they're even more, they're the village's timer, telling you it's time to stop working and start waiting for the hunger of night. On the road, you see the village changing its colors. Stalls are being cleared away. Ashes from the charcoal stoves drift in the wind. Children are being called home, their faces smeared, legs caked with mud, smiling wide, though all they carry are a few clumps of dirt. The adults walk in silence, shoulders slumped, each looking as if they've just finished a long battle. And in truth, that's exactly what it was, not against soldiers, but against the soil, against hunger, against time itself. You pause by the village well. The water glimmers faintly with the last scraps of daylight. But you know better. Drinking straight from it means risking days bedridden or never getting up again. Modern people have water filters, plastic bottles, clean taps. Medieval people have faith. Faith that drinking beer instead of water at least gives you a fighting chance to survive. The wind sweeps past, carrying the heavier scent of ash. Someone has lit a fire for supper. Smoke rises, curling above the thatched rooftops, mingling with the purple sky. You inhale, your stomach growling again. That smell doesn't promise a good meal, but at least it signals that something is boiling on the fire, even if it's only a pot of thin vegetables. You keep walking. The village path grows darker, the mud colder underfoot. The mice grow bolder, scurrying openly across your way. By day, they hide. By night, they own the place as if the whole village belongs to them, too. You watch them and think at least they don't have to work all day just to eat. The sky deepens fully into purple. The thatched roofs glimmer one last time in fading light, then vanish into shadow. People light their candles, small flames glowing gold, trembling through the cracks of wooden walls. One flickering candle here, one dark house there, that is the familiar portrait of the village. No street lights, no electricity, only a thick blanket of darkness, heavy as damp cloth, settling over everything. You hear footsteps along the road, hurried whispers carried in the dark. In this century, night doesn't just hide rest, it hides fear. Demons, thieves, plague all imagined as lurking in the shadows. Historians still debate, were medieval people truly superstitious, afraid of the dark? You know this much when your only light is a candle flickering weakly. Any fear can feel real enough. You sigh. The wind whistles. Ash drifts. Cold mud clings to your feet. Each step feels heavy. But at last, your thatched roof comes into view. Small, crooked, smoke rising faintly from the low clay chimney. A poor sight by any measure, yet now it feels like comfort. At least you have a place to return to. The sun has vanished. The day is done. And now, another chapter begins returning to the hut, where the fire crackles, the mice gnaw straw, and your family gathers in the dark. You stand before the low, warped wooden door. The moment you push it, it creaks in protest, as though the wood itself complains after the long day. Mud weighs heavy on your wooden sandals as you drag yourself inside. The familiar hut, dim and cramped, glows only faintly with the fire in the small hearth. Ash floats as fine dust in the air, hanging like your family's private fog. The smells smoke, straw, people blend together. You breathe it in, stinging your eyes. Yet strangely, it feels almost comforting in its familiarity. Historians sometimes argue, did medieval people see smell as just part of life. You think they had no other choice. When you live in smoke and straw every single day, breathing stops being a choice. It becomes destiny. Your family gathers around the hearth. Firelight dances, throwing crooked shadows against the warped wooden walls. The children huddle close, shivering and giggling. A hen shuffles in the corner, squeezed into the darkness like a silent family member. The mice, of course, are anything but silent. You hear them gnawing at the straw behind you, claiming the hut as theirs too. And truthfully, they're not wrong. Here, every creature has the right to stay, as long as it's stubborn enough to survive. You hang your coarse wool tunic on a wooden peg. It droops, heavy and damp, as if soaked in cooled ash. The smell is sharp, but no one flinches. In this hut, everyone smells the same, and the rarest equality is that no one notices anyone else is worse. You sit down on the straw mat spread across the floor. It crackles dryly, but mixed within are dust, mud, and old animal droppings. You sigh, leaning back. Compared to the open fields all day, this pile of straw feels strangely comfortable. Modern people spend money on spring mattresses, foam mattresses. You have the straw and mice mattress, a little stiff, a little itchy, but at least it won't collapse in the night. The wind whistles through gaps in the thatched roof, snapping the fire and scattering ash. You hold your hands close to the flame. The weak warmth seeps into your skin, not enough to chase away the cold, but enough to remind you you're not a frozen statue yet. In this century, one small fire is the central heating system of the whole family, and the only reason to sit this close together. After a while, someone sets a clay pot on the hearth. The water inside begins to bubble softly. A wooden spoon stirs with quiet clinks. You don't expect anything delicious. You only hope for something to chew, something to quiet your stomach's complaints. Historians love to ask, what did medieval people eat every day? The answer is simple. Whatever didn't kill them on the spot. You look around the hut. The wooden walls are blotched. The thatched roof has holes. The dirt floor is stained and uneven. But within the smoke and the dark, you still feel its familiarity. It isn't a castle. It isn't luxury. Yet it's a place where you know every crack in the wall, every tuft of straw, even the favorite paths of the mice. And that is enough to call it home. Outside, the darkness thickens, but inside, the fire glows with a soft orange light. Ash drifts into the air like a faint constellation, a tiny universe of its own. You sit there, listening the wind, the fire, the mice, the spoon tapping the pot. A family's music pour, simple but familiar, lulling you into the slow rhythm of a medieval evening. You rest your head against a wooden post and exhale quietly. The exhaustion of the long afternoon begins to fade, giving way to another pace, waiting for the meager supper, gathering by the fire, and slowly sinking into the heavy night. The clay pot on the hearth starts to bubble. Thin steam rises, curling through the low hut, weighing down the straw roof. You sit close, eyes stinging from the smoke, yet you keep staring. Your empty stomach makes this pot look like treasure. Inside, water boils, a few pale slices of turnip floating, a few wilted greens drifting. If luck smiles tonight, there might even be a couple beans bobbing on the surface. Modern people might call it a light vegetarian broth, healthy and cleansing. Medieval people just call it soup, because there's nothing else left. You hold your wooden bowl, waiting your turn. The wooden spoon clinks against the pot clack, clack like a small drumbeat. Each portion is ladled out, more broth than substance, steam rising so hot it makes you both eager to taste and afraid to burn your tongue. When your bowl is finally handed to you, you cradle it as if it were a cup of gold. In this century, happiness is measured by the warmth of your food. You blow gently, then sip. The flavor is thin, bland, only a faint sharpness from turnip and a trace of smoke from the hearth. You swallow, your belly warming a little, your hunger easing. You think quietly, the finest spice of all is hunger itself. Beside you, the black bread makes its return, still hard, still heavy as stone, but dipped into hot soup, it softens slightly. You bite, your teeth crackling. But at least this time, the bread cooperates more than it did at noon. Historians might call it a high-energy diet. You'd call it negotiating with bread. The whole family sits around the fire, silent, broken only by the sound of slurping and the dry crunch of chewing. Children smack their lips, adults bow their heads. No one complains. Why complain when there's nothing more to put in the pot in this century? Silence is the most common seasoning on the table. You glance around and catch sight of a mouse lurking in the corner. A small one, eyes glinting in the dark, nose twitching at the smell of soup. You stomp lightly. It scurries off, but you know it will return. Maybe it's hoping for a crumb of bread. And you think to yourself, if you were a mouse, you'd do the same. Outside, the wind howls, slipping through the thatched roof. Ash drifts from the hearth, glowing in the orange firelight. You take another sip, your throat burning hot. The warmth of the meal comes not only from the food, but from the family gathered close. Modern people have polished wooden tables, scented candles, tablecloths. Medieval people have clay pots, straw, and smoke. But the result is the same people sitting together, sharing a meal and sharing the dark. After a while, your bowl is empty. Nothing remains but faint gray streaks clinging to the wood. You glance at it, wishing for more, but the pot is nearly bare. Food never truly satisfies. It only keeps the stomach from crying out. And again, you remind yourself, one more day alive, that's enough. The soft tapping of spoons on bowls signals the meal's end. Children lick their lips. The adults lean back. You exhale, weary but lighter, even if it's only thin soup. This supper is a rare pause in the day, where ash, fire, and shadow weave a space that feels briefly safe. Your eyes settle on the flame. It flickers small, casting its glow across the faces around you. Ash spirals in the air. The wind groans outside. The mice scratch in the straw. Together, it all becomes a rhythm that lulls you. And you know, after supper comes the moment by the fire, when stories are told, before the night swallows the whole village. You sit closer to the hearth, your wooden bowl empty, your hands still warm from the rising steam. The fire crackles low, white ash stacking in fragile layers, scattering each time the draft slips through the walls, brushing against your skin, your hair. You breathe in, lungs filling with smoke, and you realize, in this century, healthy lungs mean lungs that learn to endure smoke for a lifetime. Firelight throws the family's shadows across the warped wooden walls, twisted, trembling shapes, as if everyone has become drifting spirits. The children giggle, pointing at the strange silhouettes on the wall. You smile too, a little bitterly. The fire has replaced all entertainment. No picture books, no glowing screens, just the shaky dance of shadows on rough wood. And strangely, it's enough to make the children laugh. Someone begins telling a story. The voice is steady and low, like the rhythm of a spoon knocking against a pot. A tale of a wandering knight, a monster in the forest, or a saint working miracles. You listen, knowing most of it is stitched from imagination. But that doesn't matter. Here, truth never feeds anyone. Only belief and stories are strong enough to carry people through the dark. You hear the scratching of mice behind you, cutting into the tale. They're chewing on leftover crusts, or maybe straight through the straw on the floor. To them, there's no difference between food and furniture. You think if there's any ghost story worth believing, it's the story of mice, the creatures that show up everywhere, day and night, never gone. Historians love to ask, were mice the main cause of the plague? You shrug in the dark, cause or not. They're definitely the most loyal audience at every fireside tale. The fire hums gently, wood crackling in soft applause to the storyteller's voice. You stretch your hands closer, the heat prickling your fingertips before you pull them back again. That warmth isn't enough to chase away the cold outside, but it creates the illusion that the world is a little kinder, a little softer. Modern people call it a comfort zone. Medieval people just call it a seat by the fire. The story shifts into its frightening part, a ghost wandering the night forest, a pale figure crossing the graveyard. The children's eyes widen. Their bodies huddle closer together. You smirk to yourself, thinking ghosts are nothing compared to the fields waiting tomorrow. But you stay quiet, letting them enjoy the small shiver they're still allowed to feel. Outside, the wind howls long and low. Its voice blends with the storytellers, making everyone shudder. You listen and wonder, perhaps the wind is the oldest soundtrack of all. It repeats endlessly, never tiring. And you know, even when people stop talking, stop telling stories, the wind will keep its own tales about straw, about ash, about crooked roofs. You lean back into the straw, eyes fixed on the dancing flame. Your eyelids grow heavy. Your head nods. The hearth lulls you into a hazy drift, where monsters and nights blur together in smoke and shadow. But you don't fall fully asleep. Beside you, someone begins to hum a lullaby, slow, steady, nearly merging with the wind. The words aren't clear, just a faint refrain, but enough to sink the whole hut into quiet. Ash keeps floating. The fire keeps burning. And you know the night isn't finished yet. Before sleep, there is still one ritual, the evening prayer. A promise whispered into the dark that even if mice chew the straw, even if the wind cries long, you still believe in tomorrow. The fire shrinks low, glowing embers breathing softly, casting a wavering orange gold against the warped wooden walls. In that fragile warmth, everyone sits in silence. Then, almost as if by instinct, you and your family begin to kneel. Your knees touch the cold ground, dry mud clinging to your coarse trousers. You bow your head, hands pressed together. A single candle burns by the simple wooden altar, just a rough plank holding a crude cross. Its flame wavers, wax dripping slowly, smoke mingling with the scent of the hearth. You breathe it in smoke, sweat, straw, all folded into your prayer. You whisper, lips moving through the words you've known by heart for years. The petitions are simple. Nothing grand, let the seeds sprout. Let the fire hold. Let the mice leave some grain. Let the cold ease a little. Modern people pray for inner peace. Medieval people prayed just to make it through the day. You lift your eyes, watching the fire cast shadows of your family across the walls. Everyone's eyes are shut, lips moving, voices blending together into a lullaby of quiet desperation. Historians argue, were medieval peasants truly devout, or simply afraid? You smile to yourself here. The difference doesn't matter. When the darkness is this thick, you believe in anything bright enough to burn. The wind screeches outside, slipping through the thatch, making the candle flame tremble. Ash drifts in the weak glow like tiny stars in the hut's private sky. You press your hands together, tighter, not entirely from piety, but from fear the flame might go out. A candle snuffed means complete darkness, and complete darkness means your imagination is free to fill the room with ghosts. A mouse scurries beneath the floor, its scratching cutting into the holy quiet. You crack an eye open, glancing down. It darts across with a crumb of bread clutched in its teeth. You chuckle softly to yourself, even in this little service. The mouse has brought its own offering. If God is watching, surely he must admire the persistence of such creatures. The prayer continues, slow and steady, like breathing. Your eyelids grow heavy, yet you keep your lips moving. In that repetition, you feel yourself being lulled, your mind drifting gently. Perhaps evening prayer isn't only for blessings, it's also a way to coax sleep. In a world where darkness always feels threatening, the adults murmur prayers for the harvest. The children whisper, asking not to fall sick or simply mimicking the grown-ups. You whisper too, not hoping for grand miracles, only for tomorrow to bring a bit of ash to rekindle the fire, a scrap of bread to chew, a pair of hands still strong enough to grip the plow. Here, miracle means nothing more complicated than that. From far off, the church bells toll again, a short peal, like a period at the end of the day. You exhale, make the sign of the cross, and lift your head. The prayer is finished. The candle still burns. The embers still glow. The wind still howls. The mice still scurry. The world hasn't changed. But inside you, at least, there's a touch more lightness. You rise, your knees cracking, rubbing your hands together. The hut settles back into its familiar sounds. Fire crackling, wind threading through gaps, mice rustling in the straw. Outside, the darkness has swallowed the fields whole, leaving only this hut glowing faintly. You sit, your eyes drooping. The prayer is done, and now sleep makes its claim. After prayer, everyone slowly lies down. The straw is spread into a shared bed. You wedge yourself into the middle, finding just enough space not to jab an elbow into someone's side. In the medieval night, there's no such thing as private rooms, no spring mattresses, only straw, smoke, and the sound of breathing tangled together. You pull the rough wool blanket over yourself. It's itchy, heavy, steeped in old smells. But when the whole family tugs at the same blanket together, the cold eases a little. Modern people might call that cozy. Medieval people call it forced sharing. The fire in the hearth is low now, only embers glowing faintly. They still breathe a little warmth, fragile as an old heartbeat. You stare into them, your eyelids sagging. Thin smoke curls upward, stinging your eyes, making you both drowsy and restless, rubbing at them again and again. Maybe the smoke is its own kind of sleeping draught free, and impossible to refuse. Outside, the wind whistles through the thatch, long, steady, like an ancient lullaby. Mice rustle under the floorboards, sometimes darting right past your hand. You don't startle anymore. Living in this century, you've learned mice never disappear. They just take shifts, standing guard over your sleep. Historians rarely mention the sound of mice in their accounts of medieval life, but without it, the picture would be incomplete. You turn, your back brushing against family, their warmth seeping through. A faint snore rises from one corner of the hut. The children breathe evenly, shifting and wriggling in the straw. Together, it forms a sleepy symphony, wind howling, mice gnawing, embers sighing, humans wheezing. A lullaby orchestra no one asked to hear, but everyone knows by heart. You drift into that hazy state, not quite awake, not fully asleep. The first sleep of the medieval night always comes early, soon after true darkness sets in. Modern people sleep in one unbroken stretch till morning. Medieval people divided it into two parts, first sleep and second sleep, with a short waking in between. Historians pieced that truth from old journals, but you're living it directly when the night is thick, and there's nothing left to do but breathe. Sleep simply comes, whether you want it or not. You drift into half-dreams. In them, you're back in the fields, hearing the plow scrape, seeing the mice dart past. Even in dreams, life refuses to let you go. But at least here, the soil isn't so heavy, the bread isn't so hard, and the wind isn't cold enough to cut to the bone. The embers in the hearth collapse with a faint crackle. The sound tugs you out of sleep for a moment, then lulls you deeper again. You roll over, clutching the rough blanket, eyelids sinking, the cramped hut thick with smoke, straw, and sweat becomes a cocoon, a poor cocoon, but still one that shields you from the darkness outside. You sink into heavier sleep, your breathing longer, steadier. Outside, the wind howls, the mice scurry, but you no longer hear them clearly. The first sleep of the night has arrived, brief and quiet, softening the ache of the long day. Yet you know, though not fully aware in this haze, that midnight will stir you awake. And then, the pause between two sleeps will open, like a hidden chapter in the rhythm of medieval life. You jolt awake not from a nightmare, but from a simple truth. Medieval people rarely slept straight through till dawn. The first sleep has passed, and now comes the strange pause of night, when everyone stirs in the dark, as if the whole village shares a secret habit. The hut hangs high, thick with smoke. Embers still glow in the hearth, giving off a weak shimmer, breathing like tired lungs. The tiny flame flickers, throwing long, twisted shadows across the wooden walls. You blink, sit up, your back still aching, your mouth dry, your throat raw from smoke. Outside, the wind howls, steady and low. It slips through the gaps in the wall, making the blanket shiver. In this pause, the wind feels louder, clearer, like a monotonous song with no end. Historians still debate, why did people split their sleep in two? Was it natural rhythm, or work and darkness forcing them awake? You know the simpler answer: too cold, too dark, too smoky. No one could sleep straight through. You hear movement around you. Family members stir. Some sit up. Some mumble quiet prayers. Children rub their eyes, whimper softly, then fall silent again. In the dark, no one speaks loud. It feels dangerous, as if too much noise might wake the night itself. The mice, of course, never sleep, scratching, gnawing, scurrying across your feet. One bold creature climbs near the hearth, sniffing the warm ash. You sigh. It's always the same when people are weakest. The mice are strongest. Modern people fear thieves in the night. You fear mice the small, tireless thieves who never stop coming. You rise and step toward the hearth, stretching your hands to the warmth. The embers crackle softly, whispering faint sounds. You add a few sticks of wood, blow gently. The fire flares just a little, its light dancing, brightening the hut for a fleeting moment. You think, in this century, performing a miracle simply means knowing where to blow. A few people use this waking hour to murmur to one another. They speak of the fields, of a plow that needs repair, of the child who coughed all day. Their hushed words drift into the dark, mingling with the hiss of wind and the scurry of mice. There is something strange about it in the dead of night, when all should be asleep. People choose to share their smallest worries. Perhaps this is the true social hour of the village. You sit close to the fire, eyelids heavy. Outside, the night is still thick, no moon, no stars, only the distant bark of a dog. Then silence again. The darkness presses back in, heavy and cold. You shiver, pulling the rough blanket tighter around yourself. Midnight waking is not for pleasure, nor for entertainment. It is simply part of the rhythm, a rhythm you never chose, but which became habit. Modern people stay up late for movies, for glowing screens. Medieval people wake at midnight to keep the fire alive, to make sure the dark does not swallow the whole house. You yawn, your eyes heavy. The embers in the hearth still breathe softly, their glow fading. The wind still moans, the mice still rustle, and the air is still thick with human breath and smoke. You feel yourself drifting, no longer fighting it. The short midnight wakefulness ends, giving way to the second sleep, the one that, if you're lucky, will carry you to dawn. You lie down again. The dry straw crunches under your back, while the faint warmth of the dying fire brushes lightly against your skin. The flames are nearly gone now, only a few tiny red specks glowing inside the gray ash. You watch them for a moment, then close your eyes. In the silence, those specks look like the faint heartbeat of the hut itself. The rough wool blanket pulls high to your chin, heavy with the smell of sweat and smoke. You turn, pressing your cheek against someone's shoulder, listening to the slow, labored, steady rhythm of their breath. On the other side, children burrow deeper into the straw, snoring softly. The hut becomes a shared cocoon, where bodies and breathing blend together. Modern people have private rooms, wide beds. Medieval people had this forced closeness, but also irreplaceable warmth, a crowded shelter that kept you from freezing. Outside, the wind wails long and low, sweeping across the thatch, making the hut shiver. But now the sound feels farther, lighter, half dreaming. The wind turns into a lullaby. The embers sigh faintly. The mice gnaw at the straw, all of it blending into the steady rhythm of the second sleep. Your eyelids sink. You slip under, this time deeper. No more shifting or stirring. Your body loosens. The ache melts away like mud washed by water. In a haze, you see the fields again, but not the ones full of sweat. These fields are quiet, glowing gold under gentle sun. In the second sleep, the harsh world softens into something kinder, where ash no longer stings, wind no longer cuts, and bread is no longer hard as stone. Historians call this segmented sleep, sometimes mapping it out with charts and theories. You don't need any of that. You just know that after waking in the middle of the night, the second sleep comes as naturally as breathing. It's a small reward, the body's way of stitching itself back together after a long day. In the dark, you can still hear the steady snore of someone beside you, the soft clatter of a wooden spoon falling from the table, the mice carrying on their nightly festival. But all of it drifts farther away, like echoes from another place. The hearth has gone cold, leaving only the faint smell of ash. The wind outside still blows, but you no longer care. You sink, deeper and calmer. The second sleep wraps around you. longer, softer, carrying you through the rest of the night. In that moment, you forget mud, wind, mice, straw, ash. Only a gentle darkness holds you now. When morning comes, the rooster will crow again. The embers will be rekindled, and a new day will repeat itself. But right now, you've stopped thinking about that. Right now, you're simply sleeping as if it were the last small miracle left in this century. And so, a medieval day closes amid the ashes of the hearth, the wind slipping through the thatch, and the crowded sleep within the dark. Life may be full of mud, scurrying mice, and bread harder than stone, but told slowly, it becomes a soft lullaby for the mind. If you found this journey intriguing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every bit of your support is like a small candle that keeps our fire alive, helping us continue telling more stories. Wishing you a peaceful night's sleep, and I'll see you again in the next night.